we are the Humanities and the Social Sciences SWGs for the OLTC program at Bishop's. And I'm just going to really quickly explain who we are, because if you don't know, that would be a really confusing talk. So the OLTCs are the online learning and technical consultants. So we work with the professors to help move courses online and help with the online and technical aspects of teaching. So that's who we are. So I'm going to move on to our next slide, which is a SLEDO slide. So if you do not know what SLEDO is, it is a polling software that we have implemented into our PowerPoint. So you can either go to sledo.com and type in the code 15257, or you can go to your camera app on your phone and you can scan the QR code and it will take you right there. So two things will be happening throughout this presentation. First off, we will be polling questions occasionally just to see what you all think that are in the chat. And there's also a Q&A feature. So on the left side of your screen, you will see a Q&A button, and you can always be asking questions in there, and we will check them occasionally. Those are completely private if you want them to be. You can type in anonymous as your name, and we will have no idea who you are, but we will still be answering the questions to our full capacity. And as well, we have somebody checking the chat occasionally to keep up with chat questions. So yeah, so I'm going to start by introducing myself. So I'm Emma Trumble, she, her, hers. I am going into my second year with a major in sports studies and a minor in communications digital culture and a minor in French as a second language. On to Sally.
Hi, I'm Sally, she, her, hers. I'm going to my fourth year as an English literature student with a minor in film.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica, she, her, hers. In the fall, I'll be starting the second year of my major in arts administration, studying fine arts at Bishop's.
I am not Saad, but I will be introducing Saad, who you can see his photo there. He, him, his. Saad is majoring in political studies with a minor in history, and he is going into his fourth year. I am Sofia, she, her, hers. I am a recent BU grad, studied in biological sciences and psychology. I will pass it to Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm also a recent BU grad, studying in psychology. And I also have a bachelor's degree from Concordia University in you're on.
Hi, I'm Locke, he, him, his. I'm studying English and French at Bishop's, and I'll also be answering all your questions in the chat today. Now, Alicia.
Hi, my name's Alicia, she, her, hers. I'm a fourth year double major in secondary education, as well as English and a minor in French.
On this slide, you can see some of the OLTCs from our student working groups have added their reasons for joining the OLTC program. So for example, some of us joined because we believe in the student perspective and learning and our passion for education, and as well as making a difference in the Bishop's community.
Our mandate is to design for delight, meaning delight for everyone involved, both faculty and students. We're making sure to focus on community, engagement, accessibility, inclusivity, and high-impact practices in all of our work as OLTCs, which we'll tell you more about later. Our goal is to be student partners and create a collaborative environment that aligns with each professor's teaching values and course objectives. So we start every meeting by saying that we collaborate in a safe and brave space, which we create together through a dialogue and collective effort, because this is new territory for everyone, and we're going to have to be safe and brave. So in summary, we're trying to be more than a COVID-19 response mechanism. Our program was created to revise and enhance the future of higher education and transition to a new and improved online learning reality. I will send it on to Alicia.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of our program. Once professors have registered for our program through our website, they are directed to take our pre-assessment questionnaire. This questionnaire asks profs to rate themselves on multiple Likert scales, which allows us to get an understanding of their needs before we even meet them through Teams. Once they've completed this, the initial consultation takes place between the faculty members and the whole student working group. This meeting consists of a detailed needs assessment in the form of a conversation. We listen to the profs' needs and concerns for their class and reassure them about our process. Next up, the SWG will then come up with a series of recommendations which are tailored to the professor's needs. They consist of top efficiency recommendations, a focus on student engagement, and potential platform enhancements to help improve the learning environment for the particular professor. The final step is that Our partnership with the OLTC is ongoing, with the ongoing implementations to the professor's course at their own pace. Some professors like to do this in a few days, some prefer it in a few weeks. The OLTCs will also provide continuous assistance with the classes they begin working with. So some of the key takeaways of our process is that it's an individualized and thorough approach to each class. It follows the professor's schedule, their technological abilities, and their style and pace. We provide ongoing support, and you may have noticed through this presentation of this slide that our process is in fact scaffolded. So here's a little graphic which is going to be available in the chat. Scaffolding refers to the scaffolded learning pedagogy. This graphic explains the process of scaffolding and can be made available to everyone to consider for your own classes. Put in simple terms, scaffolding allows students to start their learning with low grade stakes and build up to higher stakes as their knowledge and understanding builds throughout the course.
All right, so our first question is, what are you most concerned about going into fall 2020? So if you haven't already joined, again, it is SWGs.com with the code 15257, or you can scan the QR code. And I'm going to give about 30 seconds to wait for some responses here. So yes, student engagement is a really big part of all education, specifically undergraduate, like we do in the Maple League. And so we're definitely working to help up student participation and just make it as similar as we can possible to being in person. Accessibility is also large. We've had lots of talks on that, and we can also help with that as well. I'm seeing a lot about burnout and screen fatigue and such, which is a large topic, which is why we're recommending things like buying your textbooks in physical copy so that you're not staring at a screen for 10, 12 hours a day. All of these are very reasonable things, and we can pretty much help with all of them, so that's great. I'll give it about 10 more seconds and then move on. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next slide here, if I can figure out how to do that, sorry. So this is not my slide, so I'm going to let whoever it is.
Yeah, so even though there are lots of fears and concerns going into fall 2020, our program has had some good reviews so far. So these are some quotes that we've gotten along the way from people either in the program or faculty that we've helped. One faculty member after a first meeting said, "It's such a treat to get to work with you, and I really feel that I can focus on the quality of content of my course instead of personal stressors." From an OLTC, we heard that students as partners in course design is an incredible opportunity for the student voice to impact the future of higher education, which really highlights the Maple League values of a student-centered experience. And finally, a quote that we have from a professor that we're working with is, "I've come around the corner from dread. Now that we have the help of the OLTC program, we can have an entire term dedicated to facilitating discussion, and that's beautiful," which again shows that student-professor collaboration and learning that we love so much. And on to the next.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm going to be talking about why the student perspective is so important. So first off, what is the student perspective? The student perspective is viewing things from a different lens than you normally would as a professor. Normally, professors view things as a professor, and that's that. But hearing from the students is really important because as students, we first off know what works for students. We've been students for a long time. And unfortunately, we also know what doesn't work, so we can help advise for both what works and what doesn't. And this leads into students as partners. So using students as partners or combining the professor perspective and the student perspective can do a lot of things. It can increase engagement and ownership for learning. When you get to choose what you're doing or help, implement and create what you're doing and what you're learning, it just makes you that much more engaged and that much more interested in whatever you're doing. We also have increased self-efficacy. We have students understanding professors' experiences and vice versa. The professors can now understand what the students are going through with their 5 courses and do they have internet access? Are they taking care of somebody at home? All of the things that you don't normally think about. And then vice versa, as students, we can understand, hey, you may have 300 papers to grade in the next week. I understand that mine will not be done by this evening. It also helps increase sense of belonging to the university, getting to work with your university and work on your university. So that's really important. And finally, reconceptualization of teaching as a collaborative practice. This is written for the professors, meaning they get to reconceptualize what teaching is for them and understand that using students and having us help can be super important. But also for the students, we can reconceptualize how teaching is done. We've been taught our entire lives, and now that we get to be a part of it, it's a completely different experience. So now we have, this looks like we have a couple of questions that were from the last response. So people are worried about student engagement and wellness, which are both completely reasonable things to be worried about. And the next thing that I'm going to talk about is how we can help you no matter what it is that you need. So we have this line here, we have this progression. So some professors come and they just want, how do I add quizzes onto my Moodle page? I need to be assessing my students online. I'm just going to share my PowerPoints. It's not a big deal. They need an hour call with us to just go over that. Some professors want a little bit more. They maybe want some Moodle and Teams 101. They want an hour or 2 hours on each of the softwares, and that's it. Some say, hey, I have 50, 75% of my course completed, and can you look at it, give me some tips? How should I implement them? And we can work with them over a week or a few weeks. And others just throw their hands up and say, I don't know, and I don't need to know, and I don't really care. I'm an educator. I'm not an IT person, and that's fine. I'm just going to hand you my syllabus. Can you make me a Moodle page from the ground up? I think it's going to be great no matter what. And we can do that as well. And then as you can see on the bottom left of your screen, there's some professors that don't fall onto this scale. They have no idea what they need. They don't know what they know. They don't know what they don't know. Just like all of us going into this, as it is such a scary time. And that's totally okay as well. We can help whether you know exactly what you need or whether you don't. So our next question is, what are your favorite ways to increase engagement? So again, at SLEDU, we're going to see if anyone has any ways that they really enjoy to increase engagement, whether in the classroom or online. Yep, class discussions are a huge one. They're super helpful in, getting the students involved in things, discussion forum, class discussions, small group discussions as well. Classes of 50, 100 students can be a lot. We understand that. Pre-class quizzes, those are really good so that for the students, we know that we are on the right track, and the professors also know that we're on the right track. Debates, those can be a lot of fun as well. Peer editing, these are all super great. Oh, lots of people like small group discussions. Wow, okay. I'm going to leave this up for about 10 more seconds and then we'll move on. But these are all super great. Video quizzes, those are lots of fun. For those of you that don't know, you can have your students watch a video, maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and throughout it, it will stop and ask them a Q&A question or a multiple choice question. What was the answer to whatever the person was just talking about? Lots of things are super helpful. Think, pair, share, yep. These are all super great. So I'm going to move on now to the next slide.
Yeah, so a lot of professors have difficulty thinking, how am I going to keep the engagement into the online learning throughout the semester? And some of the things that we have suggested as OLTCs are as follows. So the first one is a flipped classroom. What that means is using asynchronous time to deliver pre-recorded material so that the in-class time can be used for discussion, or it could be a way for students to show what they've learned and teach it to other students. The next one is regular feedback. So providing students with feedback is a good way to give students an idea of their progress so they can make improvements where necessary. The next one is virtual office hours. What that means is having virtual office hours is a great way to let students know that you care and you're there to support their success. So using the scheduler tool in Moodle is a quick and effective way to make appointments with your students for their needs/questions. Some students present difficulty communicating with professors in person, so having the ability to communicate online is important. The next one is freedom of choice. What this means is giving students the ability to choose their own adventure is advantageous to both the student and the professor. So this is giving the students the ability to complete work in a way that allows them to express themselves at their full potential. This can properly reflect their understanding. These are just the 4 main ways of engagement that we showcase, but there are other options. So for example, micro lectures, or as Emma mentioned before, video quizzes, which are a great way for professors to increase engagement in the class.
So now we have another question here. What are your favorite ways to increase community? So again, we'll give some time. Ooh, virtual cup of coffee, that's one of our favorites. You can have students sit down with each other over Zoom and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever and just talk about things. They could be class related, they could be non-class related, and it's a good way. It's like that conversation, the hall conversation you have walking to class that you kind of lose out on. Icebreakers, yeah, those are super helpful too. We have a lot of different ideas for those. Discussion forums, those are really helpful as well. Students can answer students' questions. Sharing a bit about yourself, yep, that's always super nice to just learn about the other people that are in your class. Streaming parties, yeah, if you have any videos or movies that you're watching within your class, those can be super helpful. It can kind of connect the students in a less academic sense. And I love 5-minute chats at the beginning of class, just a way to, start class a little bit more, a little bit less academic and a little bit more fun. I'll let this go for a couple of seconds. Ooh, Padlet, that's super cool. We will be talking about that in a little bit as well. And yeah, that sounds pretty good. Those are all really nice. So now back to Sofia.
Thanks, Emma. So illustrated here are 6 different ways that we feel are great for increasing community in the classroom. So the first one is forum discussions. So forums are a great way for students to discuss class topics with their peers and the professor outside of class time. It gives them the opportunity to ask questions that other students might have, and they can troubleshoot that on their own. Also, the professor has the ability to intervene when necessary and can provide their own input into the posts. And it's also beneficial to the professor because since the students are talking about it amongst themselves and figuring out the answers to their own questions, they won't need to email the professor as much. So it's nicer for the professor's inbox. The next one is breakout channels. The reason why it's titled breakout channels is some of you may be familiar with breakout rooms. That is actually not a function of Microsoft Teams at the moment, but the private channels function in Microsoft Teams is a great way to sort of group your students so they can have discussions outside of class, or they can do their group work within the channel of the class. So that's another great way to increase community. The next one is the use of chat rooms. So chat rooms are a good way for students to communicate with each other on any other topic, and this is through Moodle. It's a good way for students to keep their sort of hallway chatter that they would normally have in the in-person situation before and after classes. The next 3, I will pass over to my colleagues. They will demonstrate them further in the next slides.
All right, so I'll go a little more in depth to some of the maybe lesser known community building applications. So I'll give a brief overview of Flipgrid and Padlet, and remember, feel free to drop questions in the chat or the Slido as we go. So these are both very Moodle friendly and can be inserted right onto the Moodle dashboard. Flipgrid is a video discussion app where the professor creates a video of themselves introducing a question or a topic, and they can have a little written portion beside it as well. Students then respond individually through videos of up to 10 minutes long, and they can film right from their webcam or cell phone, add filters or fun little emoji graphics or not. Their peers can then react and respond with written comments or videos themselves, so it becomes kind of an asynchronous face-to-face discussion. And what's great is that closed captioning and video transcripts are built right into the program. And it is accessible through our Bishop's Microsoft login, so you don't have to create a separate page for that, or login for that, sorry. And then Padlet is another great tool to integrate within Moodle. It's an online bulletin board, and students and profs can post photos that are part of a theme or subject in an interactive space. So this app is useful for icebreaker introductions. I know in our training for the OLTC program, we posted pictures of our work from home situation, and we got to kind of see what everybody else was looking at every day, even if we couldn't be together. It would also be great for language classes for that kind of themed assignment, and it's basically your course's Instagram page.
I'll jump in on these as well, just so we can have a concrete example of how both of these are currently being implemented in a language class at Bishop's. So we have a foreign language class that is actually using Flipgrid as a tool to have students practice their pronunciation. Because the professor is able to reply to the student with a video, they're able to reply with the proper pronunciation and have the student reply trying again, or even sending a video congratulating the student with a good pronunciation. So that would be how that class is going to be using Flipgrid this fall. That class has also chosen to use Padlet, but not necessarily in the Instagram sense, which suits a lot of classes, but for posting a photo and then requiring the students to use a specific grammar to write a sentence about the photo. So this is another way that this professor is keeping students engaged, and just small activities that take less than 5 minutes for the students actually incorporates into the scaffolded idea that we spoke about earlier. Allowing students to practice their learning is one of the most key things with learning in general, but we do feel with the online education, it's become even more important and prominent. So just wanted to toss that in there. All right, so now we're going to chat a little bit more in depth about our wellness statement. So a wellness statement is an acknowledgement of the importance of students' well-being during COVID-19. Students in university right now have never experienced a pandemic such as this, so we felt that it was very important to provide a wellness statement which reassures students in their feelings and in their emotions during this time. So some professors choose to present their wellness statement as a letter that would be posted on their Moodle and open for all students in their class to read. Others choose to insert this message directly into their syllabus, and we think this is fantastic because the syllabus truly is the first document of a course that students consult. Some prefer to use this dynamic graphic version of a welcome statement, which we're displaying on this slide right here, because it's a little bit less intimidating and it gives a really nice summary of a wellness statement for students. And of course, this graphic is actually going to be available for any professors that we have in the chat and the call that want to use it for your classes. Sally and myself were the creators of this document, and we would be overjoyed if you used it. So that'll be available. And then finally, professors can even record quick videos of themselves explaining why mental health and self-care will be of utmost importance while pursuing studies in the midst of a pandemic. There is an application on Moodle for a quick 2-minute video at the top of your Moodle page. Super, super easy to do. And it's just an even more personal way to connect with your students, especially if you're having an online-only class.
So our next question is, do you know what high impact practices are? This should appear on your SLEDU again, and the answers are yes, yes, and I have used them, or no, which is totally okay, as we will explain it to you in just a moment. And I'll leave this up for about 30 seconds. Perfect, so it's seeming like lots of you know what they are, and a few of you don't, which I said, again, is okay. But sadly, nobody has used them in their classes before, which is okay, as we will give some examples later. So I'm going to move on now, and we can talk about them a little bit more.
All right. So high impact practices are a great tool for active learning and preparing students for their roles in their professional fields. I can also put a link to a page describing them more in depth after the chat in the Q&A. I'll drop a link about that. They're a great tool for active learning. Some of the top ones that we help implement through the OLTC program are writing intensive courses with that scaffolded model of low to high risk assessments that we were talking about, and building learning communities with programs like Flipgrid and Moodle forums, where people are building a common learning space. Overall, high impact and engaged learning practices help to encourage students to invest significant and meaningful effort on authentic and complex tasks. However, as these practices are a bit more involved than the traditional and slightly more transactional educational model of the lecture, essay, grade, graduate, students can experience some cognitive dissonance, some discomfort as their learning becomes more transformational and personal. And this is where holding true to that wellness statement is very important as we all grow and learn together.
So our next question are, what are your go-to ways to assess participation in your classroom? So for the OLTCs in the room, you can answer based in an online context, and for the current professors, you can answer based in a more in-person context. But this is just another discussion. We can go on. Hand raising, yep, that's huge. A lot of times you get to know the students that talk more and less the students that talk less. But in a situation like this, I have no idea who is saying any of this, but I'm getting lots of participation. Daily hand-in quizzes, those are super helpful to know how much your students are doing outside of class. Learning journals, those are super cool. You can also use them on Moodle, which is something we can help with. Whoever speaks, I know this is wrong, it is what happens though. You have lots of students that talk a lot and others that don't say anything. Attendance and answering questions, yep, just like we've heard. Comments on peers' posts or low-stake assignments, that's perfect. Just seeing who's interacting, even if it's nothing super major, just those that interact are really helpful. Attendance for synchronous classes, yep, attendance is super good. Perusal, that's really cool. I don't think we will be covering that today, but it's basically, for those that don't know, an online platform that you can post things like readings or whatever, and then your students can go in and annotate them collaboratively, so you can comment and your students can comment all at once. You can star things. That's super cool. Responses to discussions on Moodle, yep, those are super helpful to know who's doing the readings and all of that. And asynchronous written responses, those are also super nice, just to see what students are thinking, and in a more low stakes environment than an essay, so that's super good. I'll give a few more seconds if anyone else has anything, and if not, we can move on. And now I'm going to pass this back to somebody else.
All right, so branching off of the wellness statement, we wanted to look at this semester as a way for us to learn and adapt our teaching to be more accessible and include everyone. Our top suggestions for accessibility in the online environment include using easy-to-read fonts like Helvetica, Calibri, and Arial, using videos or podcasts with closed captioning and transcripts. These are really essential for those that are neurodiverse and might need those transcripts or captions to fully absorb the information. And we also created an online student accommodation questionnaire on Moodle, and a lot of professors will use it to adapt their course according to potential accessibility issues encountered by their students. So here you can see a screenshot we took directly from a Moodle that we incorporated this student accommodation questionnaire. It is 6 questions long, and it touches on time zones, technology equipment, the course load of a student, any special accommodation requests, or more topics that will allow professors to paint an accurate portrait of their online classrooms. In an almost exclusively virtual space, every effort counts in creating empathetic human connections. And we feel that including this student accommodation questionnaire gives the student an opportunity to connect with the professor and share what their needs are for the class, instead of the professor going on with, maybe a font that the student is having a hard time reading. It's these simple things that can really make an impact on a student's experience within a class.
And finally, here are the resources that we have if you would like to look into any of this more. So our website is bishopsoltc.com, where you can find a lot of information about us, a lot of resources about online education. And if you would like to sign up, you can sign up for the program there and get partnered with one of us. The next Better Together session is always Tuesday, Thursday, so make sure you come back here. And the next Maple League hosts and special interest sessions on Wednesdays. So now I'm going to move on to our Q&A, which it looks like we have a few questions. So first off, do you have any tips to address student and faculty wellness throughout the semester? And this has 2 people that have wanted to know the answer to this one. So I'm going to pass this on to Sally.
So to address student and faculty wellness throughout this semester, we are also suggesting a feedback form, which is anonymous or private between one student and the professor, and that's just a place to touch base. Especially if you're in a large class, it might be intimidating to speak up or even to sign up for office hours, to just have that online written space for a student to say, hey, things have been really difficult this week. I might not be able to attend the synchronous lectures, which I know a lot of people are assessing participation by their synchronous participation, but with accessibility, that might be a little bit harder to do this year. So just have to have spaces for communication and empathy and building those human connections, even through a screen, is really important to kind of address wellness as we go through, and to update the wellness statement or repost it or just address it continually throughout the semester as a reminder would be really important. If anyone else has anything to add, yeah.
To say, if I may jump in on that, for students and faculty, I know that we're not necessarily doing on-campus events, but we have some group or some faculty who is working on doing like more casual, have a coffee type open chat rooms for students, as well as Bishop's University is still offering all their counseling services and accommodation services online. So that's another opportunity for students to have their wellness addressed throughout the semester.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. So it looks like we have another question about, similarly to what Sally was talking about, should I require my students to keep their cameras on at all times? And I'm going to hand this one off to Sophia.
I mean, this is a tricky question because I know a lot of professors want the engagement from their students. They want to see their faces. They want to see the eye contact like they would in the classroom. However, working from home is not the same as being in the classroom. So in that sense, it can be a bit tricky because in a way it's an invasion of privacy. Some students don't want the rest of the class to see what's going on at home. Maybe they're not comfortable with it, or maybe a student has a parent, or they are a parent, or maybe there's someone that they're caring for and there's things going on at home that they don't necessarily want to share with the rest of the class, or it's just a privacy issue. But in my opinion, if it's a question of should I or should I not, I would say it should be suggested but not necessarily enforced. I understand why it is important for the professor and how it's important for the rest of the class, to feel like they're not speaking into the black hole, as it's called, but there are definitely things that should be considered when asking students to keep their cameras on.
Yeah, that was really great. And I think it's a question not of is it legal or can I, it's should I, is it ethical? And if we all just put on our thinking caps for 2 seconds and think of a situation that a student would be 100% engaged in your class, they're answering the SLEDU, they're taking notes or whatever you're having them do at the time, they're engaging in the type discussion, but they wouldn't want you to be looking at them. Are they taking care of a child? Are they eating because they have work right after this? Is their background kind of not something they would want you to see? Whatever it is, if we can think of one example that they would still be 100% engaged but wouldn't want you to see them, that's enough for us to not make it required. And then what is one thing you recommend I do for teaching and lecturing if I can't use your program? I'm going to pass this on to Andre and he can answer.
Okay, just to test, everybody can hear me, correct? Okay, I was having a lot of issues. I had really bad connection. I was supposed to be moderating this chat, but that's okay. I can talk now. Yeah, so that question, is there anything that we can recommend to you if you are not taking the program? We have, on our website, we have plenty of recommendations that we have for just general Moodle pages and stuff, but specifically for lecturing. If you are in this case where you're doing asynchronous lectures and you're posting them online on Moodle or whatever other program you're using, we always recommend to do micro lectures, so keep them 15 minutes or shorter and split them up by topic, just because of the online distractions that students will have to face with in the setting that they'll be sitting in. There's 15-minute attention span. It's just the easiest way to keep students engaged is if you give bite-sized pieces of information for the lectures, or even if you have just a synchronous call that could also be just cut down into different topics that you go through, just as long as it's not doing 3 hours on a Zoom call or listening to an hour and a half of videos, because students just will stop paying attention or will just have difficulty paying attention in general.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
If there's something else that other teammates would want to say, it's okay. Please respond. That's the thing that came off to the top of my head.
No, that was really good. And I am also really quickly going to pass off the how can you accommodate students with bad Wi-Fi to Andre, who is having Wi-Fi issues today. I feel like it's kind of fitting.
Sure. Yeah, so just kind of like me having issues today. The best way to accommodate students that are having poor internet connection, it's kind of hard to guess when that will happen. It could be an ongoing thing, but it could be just one day your Wi-Fi shuts off and you can't join a call. We were having issues with that with certain faculty members. We just had to reschedule a meeting, but it's separate. It's a little different if it's for an actual class. So I believe that the key thing is, and it's going to be the learning curve in this new space, it's patience. We just have to understand that if our connection's great, maybe not the person on the other side of the Zoom call or Teams call has as good connection as us, and potentially when it comes to submissions, be a little more lenient if you are aware of a student's accessibility to internet and all of that, or just be understanding that maybe not everybody can come to a synchronous call and that they might have to watch an asynchronous recording of it. So potentially having potentially we've been discussing to have any synchronous call on Teams or Zoom or Blue Jeans, whatever you're using, to be recorded, just so the students who couldn't attend for any reason can watch it later and still participate in that part of the course. So yeah, when it comes to internet access, it all just has to do with patience and trying to accommodate as best as possible. It changes from case to case, but we're here to help out with many of those cases.
Yeah, that was really good. And I just would add one little point about that is there is no right answer for a lot of these questions. There's no perfect. We've never done this before. Nobody has. But as long as you're thinking about it and being equitable in your thoughts, that's enough. As long as you're able to talk to a student and say, hey, what would work for you? Or these are my ideas. As long as you're not sitting on this high horse and thinking, no, I can't change anything. Like, this is what I've always done. That's the best thing you can do, is just thinking equitable. That's it. So that was really good. And then another question is, do you have any information on when or if IT will create Teams groups for each course? To do this, you will either contact one of us if you're working with us and we can have IT do it, or if you email somebody at IT, for example, Scott Stoddard, he can make the Teams groups for you and have a discussion about what you would like that would be best. So that's something that you will initiate, because they're not making Teams for every single course like they do for Moodle pages. Since not every single course needs one, you will have to initiate the process, but then it will be relatively simple. Unless anyone has anything else. Yeah.
I'll just add to that even though IT will create the Teams for you, either the professor teaching the course or one of the OLTCs will have to go in and manually add every single student who is registered for the course. Because it's not automatic like Moodle. When a student registers for a course, they're put on Moodle, but they're not put on the team. So we'll have to do that for you, or you can do it yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. So if you have a team channel, then you will have to add all of the students. There's another way that will be coming probably within the next day or so, which is more like what we're doing right now, or Blue Jeans, or a Zoom call where you can have a link that your students can go to, meaning you don't need to add all 20 or 30 or 100 students to this channel. They can just click the link when they're ready to join. So that will be a lot easier, probably on both ends. You'll lose a couple of features and functionalities doing that, but it probably won't affect things for most courses. And then another question similarly is there a quick way to reach ITS for my students and myself in the fall? For students, we are going to be recommending you put a little block, which is one of those features on the side of your Moodle page that has links for the IT help desk and such, so that you don't have students coming to you saying, hey, what do I do about IT questions, when you don't know, and then you just have to transfer them to IT. You are taken out. You're not that middleman anymore. And then if anyone wants to answer about faculty, that would be great.
Yeah, I can add to that, Emma. For the ITS block that you were talking about, I just wanted to let everyone know that potentially is not already registered with our program through www.bishopsoltc.com. That is one of the top things that we're going to do. So earlier in the program, we spoke about the efficiency, the efficiency recommendations. So right now, I believe we have over 10 efficiency recommendations that are super simple switches on a Moodle page or on a Teams page, like this ITS block, that are there to simply help students and yourself have an easier time navigating. Some other things on that efficiency list include just putting a profile picture on your Moodle so students can see who they're being taught by. Another one is migrating resources from the old Moodle. As some of you might know, we have a new Moodle. It's called Moodle 2, and that's what we're using this semester. It's much more intuitive. It has a lot more applications, and yeah, we just want to help you guys use it as efficiently as possible. So we have those recommendations right off the bat for you.
Thank you so much for that. And again, going back to the faculty, all of the resources that are there, IT help desk and all of that are there for everybody. They won't say, no, you're a doctor, not a student, I can't help you. It's all the same for everybody. We're all, technology clueless sometimes. So whatever we need is there for everybody. I've seen a couple on hybrid or blended. Hybrid or blended, what is the difference? Which works best? And my course is currently a hybrid course, but would it be better to have it be completely online? I'm worried about equity of student learning. If somebody wants to answer that, that would be super.
I can jump in on the equity of online versus in person. That's really one thing that's at the focus of our program as we're going through, is making sure that those online students, those international students or immune compromised or people that just can't get back to campus or don't want to, are getting the same level of education as their peers in class. So one of the things that I would recommend for creating that equity is doing all of the foundational material, all the lectures, as much as possible, doing that asynchronously. So have all the, whether it's in podcasts or in micro lectures, have that information somewhere that is accessible that you don't have to be in class for. A lot of people have talked about recording a lecture while they're in the classroom and walking around, and how it's kind of like watching a very bad movie for students that aren't there. So having it recorded the same way for students in person, that they can do it as homework before coming to class, and then having, whether the synchronous discussion is in person or in class, we've got a bunch of different ways of doing that, whether you do it in small groups in person, or you do in person with someone on a Zoom call joining, or if they're at the computer at the back of the class, or if you do a separate synchronous discussion via Teams, that can then be more of the discussion based or more questions, or to go over material that they've already learned in the asynchronous part. So it's kind of one of our big problems, is trying to overcome that and try to help with that. But it can be equitable. It's just very difficult to implement in the first round around. As to hybrid or blended, I haven't heard the term blended before, but I believe it would be a blend of synchronous and asynchronous. So it would be a call where you're all there together, or the forums or whatnot where you don't have to be online at the same time as someone else. And they all work differently, and we're all going through it.
From just my assumptions again, and I haven't heard blended either, I would assume that blended is more all of the students are in the class and then all like in person, and then later in the week, for example, they join an online call sort of thing. Whereas hybrid is, say Sally is in the same room as Alicia right now, and Alicia is teaching Sally something, but I'm just seeing a video of it. I'm getting half the quality that Sally is for the same, I'm supposed to be getting the same quality of education and everything, but I'm not. I'm only getting half of it. So if I were to assume, I would say that blended sounds better, but I don't know the term. I'm apologizing for that. But it's just remembering that the students are supposed to be getting the same thing out of it, and they may or may not be in the end. And then we have 2 more questions I'll go on to. Do you think group projects are a fair way to assess students in an online format?
I could say one thing on it. I don't know if you guys can hear me still, but it's different for everyone. Some students do not like group projects no matter what the situation is, and there's some that absolutely thrive on it. So I would say in an online format, it is still fair to assess the students as long as people's voices are being heard. And even though it's a group project, people are still getting assessed in their individual work as well within the group project. So that could be through peer review, it could be through individual self-assessment. There's many different ways to do it, but long story short, I think it's fair. Someone can agree or disagree if they want to, but I think as long as it's done in a way that the students are being heard, students are getting, fair amounts of work done, it's working for everybody, it should be okay.
I agree with everything you've said. Oh, sorry, Alicia. I'll just be really quickly. I totally agree with everything that you have said. I do just want to bring up the point that the group project itself is probably equitable and probably fair, but it's the doing of the group project. It's you have to meet. What if the student is in Australia right now and that's 2 a.m. when they're able to work? Or what if I work during the day and Alicia works at night? There is absolutely no time. And then Sally's in our group, but Sally has to take care of her daughter and her grandmother, and then it's just all fallen through. So maybe in an in-person setting where we could meet for 1 hour a week at the library and work on a project, it would be the best project anyone has ever seen. But in this situation, it may completely fall through. So it's not the project itself that isn't equitable, it's the making of the project. Sorry, Alicia.
No, that's awesome, Emma, and right on track with what I was kind of gonna get at. It's important to take into account students, like we spoke about earlier, that little questionnaire that we did that incorporates the time zones and whatnot. But another format of group projects would be allowing students to choose their groups. And I know some professors are not, they don't prefer this method because, it's just a classic thing that students who choose their friends, it might not always be the best thing. But in this case, choosing your own group allows you to choose people to be in your group that fit best with your schedule. The second thing that I wanted to mention was incorporating Teams private channels into your teams for the actual purpose of group work, whether that's discussion or an actual project. Teams channels are really easy to make and really easy to put students into, and this allows them to have a constant chat, a constant video, anytime they want. It's always there, and it saves right on Teams, and the professor actually, as the owner of the Microsoft team, would have the ability to go into every channel, answer questions, see if the students are on track, and basically help them out and fulfill their project as best as they can, or even just a discussion, something as simple as that.
Thank you. And that even gave me an idea on the spot. If you want to keep it in groups that you decide or that are randomized and the students don't get to choose, but you want to keep that equitability of them being able to work, maybe you put out a form that has morning, afternoon, evening for every single day of the week. The students check off when they work, and then some online software combines them all and gives them groups based on students that work together. If I have Mondays off and Alicia doesn't, we would not be put together. But maybe I'm put with Jessica, who does have Mondays off, that sort of thing. Sorry, Alicia.
And that brought another thing, and I just see that Tanisha said it in the chat, but Doodle is an amazing application for that exact purpose. It allows you to create group meetings based on everyone's availability. That is actually a tutorial that will soon be available on the OLTC website for students who are unfamiliar with Doodle. It's an online scheduling application. It's totally free, and it works really well. So that's also a potential way to create groups this fall.
Yeah, that software is actually super helpful. I think we've talked about that quite a bit. So I'm going to move on to the last question really quickly is, I don't know a lot about the new Moodle. Are there simple ways to make my page more fun and appealing for my students? I'll hand this one to Andre, and then people can join in from there.
All right. One thing that we've been doing for almost every class that we've been working on is splitting up the topics by splitting up the Moodle page by topics, and then you can have a little image at the top, like a little banner that kind of introduces it to it. So that just instantly kind of gives an atmosphere to that specific topic. And actually, Alicia has a lot more to talk about than I do, so I'll just let her answer this question.
I didn't intend when I started working with the Humanities to become the banner creator, the little graphic designer in the background, but the scaffolding poster that you saw, the wellness statement, these are all just graphics that are designed with a teacher or with a professor's tastes in mind. Like Andre was saying, every professor that we're working with in Humanities is given the option to have these welcome banners or weekly banners added to their course, and like Andre said, it gives a little bit of extra flair to a professor's page and kind of gives personality. We are very familiar with Moodle, and it all looks the same. So adding some graphic features, even we've started including a photo of the professor within their contact block. These type of small little changes that are just they're just aesthetic changes on the Moodle page can make it a lot more personal and a lot more recognizable by the student. I personally use an online program called PicMonkey to create these. You can use it free, you can do the subscription, but it's really user friendly. And we find that it's a good way to create connections between the students having not only these graphics that are more personal to the course, but also having that photo of the professor and encouraging students to also add their own profile pictures as well. And I just see that Erin was mentioning Canva is also good. Canva and PicMonkey are like twin sisters. They're both fantastic.
Yeah, I love everything you said there, and I would just add that no matter how boring or fun or appealing the page appears, something that's really helpful is maybe typing up a paragraph or a couple bullet points or making a video explaining how to use your Moodle page, because we're implementing all of these super cool things and fun things and headings and quizzes and sidebars that have your office hours and all of these things. And if I can't find it or understand how to use it because it's slightly different than my other professors, which is slightly different than my other professors, then it's not really the most helpful thing. So making a little tutorial or something explaining, here's what my Moodle page is like, is actually extremely helpful for the students. It could be 2 minutes long. But yeah, I think that was a really good question, and I really like the answer as well. So that looks like it's all of our questions. So